10.1.5 is approaching, and we still have rating data to look at for melees this time, because it is Friday, and that means
it's tier list Friday, TLF baby, and things have shaped up in a couple of weeks where things looking different for certain specs.
Because things happen with things inside them, and things are the thingies that the most important things in the world. Well, listen, we are taking a look at melees, only melees this time, because there has been some shakeups for a couple of specs. Some of them retained their position, but it was quite humbling to see some others move around the rankings. As always, we are looking at Warcraft logs, at Druid.gg, at subcreation, taking all the data we can take into account and place these as subjective as possible with all of the information we have over there. Now, with that being said, let's just get into it and start it off with Arms Warrior, which is the first surprise of this tier list, because last time when we looked at the data, that was like 2 weeks ago with all DPS, Arms Warrior was in a, I would say, safe zone B tier.
It was pretty average. It was clearly behind Fury Warrior for probably, I don't know, maybe scaling issues. Maybe some of the top Arms Warriors weren't getting their thing, because Arms Warrior is actually kind of excels at single target for some reason, although their burst is probably bigger than Fury Warrior's burst. So it kind of seen some love and an increase since last time.
Yeah. Then you have to remember, like, when that execute goes in, there's really no comparison with any spec in the game. So as opposed to last time, this is actually an A tier in the melee rankings. Very cool to see.
This was very close to being an SGSU. One of the best melee specs in the game currently. As you can see, what things can happen in 2 weeks.
All right. Assassination Rogue. Now, Assassination Rogue, initially when we placed it, it was into A tier. However,
at the bottom A tier.
Yeah, well, we talked about Assassination like always being recognized as a very big powerhouse in terms of like single target. When it came out to Cleave and, you know, the Zakali fight, you didn't really see it shine too much over there. But when it was like pure single target, which is like the majority of the raid, it was doing its own. So it was into A tier. However, due to the shakeup of other specs like Pumping Ahead, it dropped down a spot. I believe it's now in B tier, down from A tier last week. So not a tragic
still
event.
About average, still like bell curve.
There's like no changes to Assassination, just some other spec took the cake. Now, what's interesting here is Outlaw Rogue.
This has been a big difference since last time.
Yeah, last time this was ranked into A tier, right? And the reason for this was that you could see Outlaw Rogues all over the place in any type of fight, and they were like competing for at least the top 5 DPS spots or whatever. Well, I do believe that now, 2 weeks after we looked at this, there are less logs for Outlaw and a lot more logs for Subtlety and, believe it or not, Assassination. So maybe because of that, Outlaw Rogue this time around goes into C tier.
I have a feeling that a lot of people are actually, obviously everybody's better geared always as the time progresses, but
fully decked out.
We were looking also at some of the logs for other specs, and I don't think Outlaw can pad as well as other specs. So it is a chance that, you know, parses-wise and overall performance-wise, Outlaw doesn't really benefit as much from being fully geared and being able to, like, you know, play around with some external buffs and things like that.
Yeah. It is hard in some fights to pad, but once again, it's all about like the top of the top mythic rating progress performance. Yeah, people will pad, people will cheese, people will try to do anything they can to get an edge, but as far as the numbers goes, yeah, Outlaw C tier. Yeah. Now, Survival. Again, similar story. Survival was in A tier.
We ranked it pretty highly in A tier in relation to all the other specs in the game. Survival is not necessarily a bad spec. It didn't really receive any kind of nerfs. It's a little bit lower this time around in comparison to all the other specs. So this is probably a good way of looking at, let's say, only melee DPS specs when we're talking about a ranking in raids, because we can rank them a little bit better against each other to kind of see exactly where the difference lies. It was weaker. It is weaker rather than A tier is right now, but last time that we looked at Survival, it was doing better than Arms. Right now, it is not.
Yeah. It's in B tier, granted in front of B tier, so it's gonna take the lead over there. Again, similar story, other specs kind of bumped it up, so some of them will just drop down due to like more poorly representation. Now, Enhancement Shaman is a weird one, because last time we ranked it and we looked at the numbers and stuff, this was a C tier. And since then, Enhancement Shaman got nerfed, and now it's a positive B tier.
It's a B tier, so I don't know how this works. I know that they've addressed the chain lightning bonuses from their tier sets, which obviously affects AoE. However, most of the more important raid bosses are single target focused. This is where you will probably want to actually be, actually performing as best as possible. And even in single target performance, enhancement doesn't have chain lightning as highly in their damage profile as you would think. So the nerf didn't really affect it too much. Most likely it's just a matter of just the spec being overall better. And if we see arms higher, I mean, it kind of makes sense that enhancement is also a little bit higher.
I was expecting enhancement to be a lot more higher to begin with, but yeah, the numbers we saw last week were definitely worse than what we are seeing now. So, more props to the enhancement players, getting up in there. Now, Feral Druids didn't really change at all.
They should have changed a little bit, maybe.
They're the poopiest spec right now in the raid, which is very sad because Feral Druids have gone through tremendous changes throughout the course of their existence.
It's so weird to see Feral consistently so low after all of the mini reworks and some of the quality of life adjustments to their talent trees. I think it might have a lot more to do with the tier set rather than we would like to admit. And it is a very wonky tier set. We've said this before. Nobody really likes combo point RNG and things like that. And even with all of the buffs, Ferocious Bite and the talents that give it more single target damage, it doesn't really feel like it's pulling enough ahead. Not to mention that its overall AoE, which was what was Feral known for last season, and it was excelling consistently at AoE, obviously still does good AoE damage. It's just not the same anymore. So it felt like it kind of lost its niche, and it didn't really gain enough on the other end to kind of, shine a little bit more, be a more valuable addition to your raid team.
Yeah, it was definitely better than Aberys because there was a lot more AoE there. Here you can only see it maybe do better in the Zakali fight. But Frost Death Knight. Frost Death Knight, I think it will retain its position as last week. It was in A tier, and it's keeping on strong over there. We have to mention that Frost DK also have seen a bigger popularity in Mythic Plus as well. It's just doing better, man. It's just doing great.
Yeah,
the numbers are there.
Whatever they did with the tier set is something that they need to keep in mind and probably bake it into the class design somehow, where actually, if you look at Frost DKs across the board, they are playing both Breath and Obliteration in also the same content, both in raids and in dungeons. And this is kind of the world that you want to be in, because you want that build variety. You want to be stuck into like, oh my god, I just have to play Breath for 3 or 4 more months. That's just boring. People have been playing this for like years and years and years. And even with, the pro arguments towards Obliteration, you're gonna get bored of Obliteration eventually. So I feel like Frost DK is in an interesting situation where with the addition of the tier set, you're actually giving the option to play both. And to be fair, while both are being competitive, they have different damage profiles, so it definitely helps with different raid bosses. You have the flexibility to be able to adapt to what's happening and actually be able to be, more efficient in your groups.
Yeah, well deserved, I would say, well deserved, about that damn time. Fury Warrior, again, still retaining its position. It was ranked 2 weeks ago into B tier, so like your safe zone, but it's interesting to see that they are doing worse than Survival right now, which is I didn't expect it because their profile is pretty much consistent all across the board. They can do well in every avenue whatsoever. They didn't see like major changes that could impact their performance negatively, but I'd say consistency is key. 2 weeks ago it was in the middle of the pack. It's still middle of the pack, no problem.
Pretty much no real changes to Fury whatsoever.
Okay, what do we have next?
Another unfortunate no changes.
Havoc Demon Hunter. Yeah, we addressed this last time as well. Havoc Demon Hunter is doing great in Mythic Plus, but not that good in single target.
It is suffering on boss damage. We have a really good Havoc in our raid team as well when we're pushing progression fights. I don't see him doing any well.
And he's playing really well. That's
he's a really good player, but I think Havoc is just suffering from tuning issues, and obviously we've seen the buffs to Havoc that they're gonna come in a couple of weeks, and hopefully that brings Havoc back in tune. Although it is apparent that I feel like we're having the Havoc discussion right now. It's currently really low.
Yeah.
That we used to have with Windwalker for years and years and years.
We might still have it for
Windwalker.
Oh my god,
no, don't say that.
It's the last one. It's the last one. Okay, Ret Paladin. This is same old story as I've said in the beginning, where we first off ranked Ret Paladins into S and A tier like consistently, but after a couple of weeks we had to like pull it down, and because the numbers just dictate that. A lot of the other specs got their gear, got their scaling done right. Ret Paladin doesn't really scale with anything that much.
That's what you think is the main issue?
Yeah, that's what it is. It was always going to be like this, so they bumped it up at the beginning, but now they retained their position in the middle of the pack. It's B tier for Ret Paladins. Don't get me wrong, everybody in B tier can hold their own, no problemo. I think like the edge, let's say for Reds, Enhancements, Furies, main Survivals, they can also do well on the Zakali fight, while Assassination, not that much.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Some
middle of the
there.
pack, nothing too spectacular. Okay, so I cannot wait to see
It
y'all in the
is.
comments. Broken Ret Paladin, oh my god, nerf.
It is, however, the most popular melee spec played right now.
Yeah,
in the raid.
there's a trillion of logs.
whatever the design did well. A lot of more people are playing red, and maybe at the end of the day, that's what really matters.
And they're enjoying it, so it's fine. It's not always about performance, okay? Subtlety Rogue. Subtlety Rogue, interestingly enough, it was initially 2 weeks ago with all of the DPS. It was an 8-tier spec, and you can definitely see it in the logs. It's still pumping really hard.
It's really good. Actually, Subtlety Rogue, in terms of all the melee specs, it's now holding the highest DPS overall in the raid from all of the DPS. So in terms of actual numbers, in terms of actual performance, even though Subtlety is slightly lower than what we ranked it last time, it is the spec that can dish out the most amount of numbers in the right circumstance, especially on Zakali. That's where usually everybody else shines in terms of overall performance. So it is good. It's just, you know, I think in relation to the other specs, is maybe not that flexible in dealing with all the types of encounters that we have, as much as probably, I don't know, Frost DK is, let's say.
The thing is, this is why you have to understand, this is not a tier list based purely on damage numbers, okay? There's a lot of factors that go into this as well. The representation, the popularity, how many number of logs do we have? Because if we have like 2 logs for Zakali, but 300 for Magmarax, well, that's going to skew the data a lot, right? So this is why, like, overall, when we're taking all of the performance points into consideration, Subtlety Rogue will be dropping from 2 weeks ago, A tier into B tier. It's not bad, okay, so don't get it twisted. Obviously better than Assassination for sure. It's just, you know, average with the rest of the guys from B tier. Safe zone.
Still best rogue spec.
Yeah, okay. So, what is it? Unholy Dead
DK.
Knight. Well, where do you think Unholy Dead Knight will be placed, man?
Well, listen, a lot of specs have gone up and down, but we don't have an S tier spec yet.
Yeah, just like surprised. I mean, there really isn't no surprise. Unholy Death Knight is still one of the best targets.
The king of the melees.
The king of the melees, and also the king of the melees PIs, because I know there's some ranged specs that can benefit from PI, but it retains like consistent top of the line performance on most of the bosses. You see a ton of logs, a ton of representation, different comps, and whatever. So again, like, overall, this spec has been dominating for a good time now in the raid, and this is by no accident. It's kind of shit in Mythic Plus.
Oh yeah, that's the interesting comparison, that in Mythic Plus doesn't seem to be doing as well, whereas, you know, Frost DK is kind of crushing it in Mythic Plus as well. Yeah. Unholy DK is actually nice because in most of the past expansions that we've seen so far, whenever the first raid season starts, Unholy is really good, and it was really good in Vault, but usually starts to trail off by the end, and that's not what we're seeing right now. So we do see a different world for Unholy DK players, where they can consistently be good all throughout multiple raid tiers. Hopefully in the next one, but we'll see by then.
Yeah, for sure. Well deserved, I would say. The Unholy Dead Knight is a beautiful spec. Last on the list, Windwalker Monks, because we have mentioned it earlier. They need more buffs to single target. They receive more buffs to single target. They will receive more buffs to single target. It ain't happening, baby. It is just not happening. I don't know why. There must be something.
I mean, if you really think about it, most of their kit is AoE. Like Fist of Fury, Spinning Crane Kick, Whirling Dragon Punch, the Feline Punch thing that makes flowers on the ground, whatever that is. It's all pure AoE, where you have Sunken as the major single target hitter. Maybe it's a design flaw. Maybe they cannot bump its single target way too much, because we do see buffs time and time again, almost every week, if not every other week, buffs to Sun Kick, buffs to Blackout Strike, buffs melee damage and Tiger Palm, and that's kind of what we're seeing with Havoc right now, because they're both kind of in the same bucket, where they're really good in Mythic Plus and on AoE fights. So one of the best AoE numbers performance out there, period, for melee specs at the very least. but boss damage is like, where is it?
Single target is it's just not there, man. However they pump it. Now, granted, you see a little bit more of a better representation for Windwalker monks than Havocs in the raid, so this is why they're taking a little bit of a position in front of them. They cannot really compete with Outlaw Rogues just yet because Outlaw, they're consistent regardless of like the type of damage they need, single target, AoE, or cleave. But they're kind of in the same bucket performance-wise, and adding to that, you know, the representation and all of the pinpoints, the pressure points you would need to touch in order to get
pressure
this
points,
right.
like a true monk.
Yeah, exactly. So that means that this is like the final image. Now, we have to take a look at some of the, you know, the other rankings currently on the raid for melee. So what are we pulling?
I think it's this is the first time that we've done analysis of the meta so quick after the last one, and it is interesting to see how it was shaken up so much.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at, it depends on what you're looking at, because for instance, U.GG does most of its ranking based on popularity. It's also kind of cross-referenced with a little bit of the DPS that we're doing. But Red is definitely ranked S tier. It is the most popular space. So it depends exactly on what kind of ranking you're interested in. If you're looking at pure numbers, you can probably see Subtlety being S tier, which is something that you can definitely see more of on subcreation, because subcreation is ranking Subtlety into A tier. Although most of the stuff is the same.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Subcreation is just like merciless with all of the other spec. It's like if you like deal under, I don't know, man, under whatever 150k damage or whatever, you're gonna be
DK F tier, dude.
Dude, this is the thing, right? And also we can take a look at the Warcraft logs, where you can definitely see, like, in terms of like pure performance, the differences are not that huge, okay? It's like very incremental. However, there is a ranking that can be talked about over there as well, and you can clearly see Feral being at the bottom of the list, and you can clearly see Unholy DK being at the top, and Arms actually, you know, being more closer to the top as well. Like
I think Warcraft logs is, well, when you know, look at the actual rankings of Warcraft logs, is probably the best indication of the differences between each spec. Obviously, we have to, you know, kind of make a separation between, let's say, Unholy and Arms, even though they're the two best melee DPS specs in the game. But if you really take like a step back and look at the entire picture, they're very close to each other. Obviously, the lower end Ferals are a little bit way more lower than everybody else, but at the end of the day, obviously everybody's doing Mythic, obviously everybody's clearing all the Mythic bosses. Soon probably everybody will have Sarkreth anyway, before even 10.1.5 starts. So it's not a discussion of, oh, this spec is unviable, never take a Feral to your raid, but you know, you can kind of make a educated guess or educated analysis of, okay, this guy is doing way better than everybody else.
Yes, but at the end of the day, what's most important is you play what you enjoy, and if you're not like constantly progressing to Mythic and trying to get, I don't know, top 500 or whatever, it's too late anyways. Just play any of the specs you enjoy, and this is just an interesting analysis to see what the top of the players are doing with Mythic progression. Thank you, Patrons, for supporting these videos. Not only that, not only the TLFs, the class guides, the news, the other guides for alt gearing, and all of the good stuff from simming and raid bots. It's a wonderful feeling to know that we have the people there who are enjoying the content and are doing that extra mile to make it happen. If you want to join the team that way, check the link in the description. There's a lot of goodies for you over there. Patreon.com/Marcelian_online.
We support the content, and we would super appreciate and love you guys. Thank you for watching the video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend, y'all. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.